What you're about to hear isn't just another video, it's something you'll feel. Every word, every pause, every breath, it's going to touch a part of you you've been ignoring for far too long. So take a deep breath, because after this you won't look at your life the same way again. Have you ever cared so much that it started to hurt? Not the kind of hurt that comes from heartbreak, but the quiet kind. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you feel like even breathing takes effort. You tell yourself you're just tired. You tell yourself you're fine. But deep down, something inside you whispers, I can't keep doing this. You try to silence it. You bury it under routines, conversations, and the constant noise of trying to prove you still care. But one day you wake up and you realize that all your caring hasn't brought you peace. It's only made you disappear. That's when it hits you. The terrifying thought that maybe you've been caring about all the wrong things. Tell me, does that feel familiar? Do you ever catch yourself replaying moments, wondering why you keep showing up for people who never really see you? You tell yourself it's love or loyalty or hope. But it's not, is it? It's fear. Fear that if you stop caring, you'll lose everything. The people, the validation, the illusion of purpose that comes from being needed. And so you hold on. You give more. You bend further, until the only thing left of you is a reflection in someone else's eyes. You know that feeling, don't you? That hollow quiet that comes after you've given everything? That ache in your chest when you realize you've been trying to prove your worth in places that only drained it? We live in a world that glorifies caring. Be kind, they say. Be selfless. Be giving. But no one ever teaches you what happens when you care too much. No one warns you that empathy can turn into exhaustion, that love without boundaries can become self-erasure. And the worst part, they'll tell you that you've changed the moment you finally stop trying to please them. But maybe that's not you changing. Maybe that's you returning to yourself. Psychologists call it empathic burnout. Philosophers might call it existential fatigue. But you felt it long before anyone named it. It's that moment when your mind says, I want peace, but your habits say, I still need to fix this. You see, when you care too much, you stop seeing the world as it is. You start seeing it as something to heal, something to manage, something that always needs your attention. You become addicted to caring, to saving, to meaning. And that addiction blinds you, because in the endless cycle of trying to make everything right, you forget the simplest truth. You were never supposed to carry it all. Be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever sat in silence and felt like you didn't even know who you were anymore? Like your entire identity was built around what you do for others, how much you care, how much you give, how much you sacrifice. And yet, no matter how much you give, it's never enough. You tell yourself to be stronger, to care harder, to be more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. But every time you forgive too quickly, every time you show up when you should have walked away, a piece of you goes missing. And after a while, you start to wonder if caring this much is love. Why does it feel like pain? There comes a point in every soul's journey when caring stops feeling noble and starts feeling like a burden. That's the point you begin to break, not loudly, but silently. The kind of breaking that looks like numbness. You stop arguing. You stop explaining yourself. You stop hoping they'll understand. Because what's the point? You've already explained your heart 100 different ways. And somehow it always sounds like noise to the ones who only listen when you're useful. And so you retreat, not out of bitterness, but out of exhaustion. You start saying less, doing less, feeling less. And people will say you've changed, but deep down, you'll know the truth. You didn't change. You just got tired of bleeding for things that never cared if you were alive. This is where the transformation begins, in the stillness that comes after you've stopped caring. At first, it feels wrong. Your mind panics. It tells you, don't stop now, they'll leave you, they'll forget you. But that's a lie, because what's actually leaving is the false self, the version of you that existed only through other people's eyes. And as it fades, something strange happens. You start to see clearly again. You begin to notice how heavy the world feels when it's carried out of guilt. You begin to realize that peace was never in being needed. It was in being free. That's when you start to understand the moment you stop caring isn't the end of compassion. It's the beginning of awareness. But be careful. This stage of awakening comes with its own danger. Because when you stop caring, you don't just lose interest in what hurt you. You start questioning everything. The relationships, the goals, the beliefs that once gave your life meaning. And that's where the real unraveling begins. You'll start noticing the silence between conversations, the emptiness in words that once made you feel seen. You'll start seeing how much of your life was built on the fear of not being enough. And suddenly you'll ask yourself, if I stop caring about all this, what's left of me? That question will echo for days, maybe weeks. And you'll resist the answer at first because deep down you already know it. What's left is the version of you that's finally free. But that freedom doesn't come peacefully. It comes with loss. It comes with confusion. It comes with a loneliness that feels almost sacred. Because to stop caring is to strip away every illusion that kept you safe. And that's where the next part of your journey begins, when detachment stops feeling like escape and starts feeling like truth. You think you're losing yourself, but you're finally meeting who you are. Next, you'll learn what happens after the silence. When the world feels empty, and yet for the first time, you're not afraid of it. Because when you stop caring, you don't become less human. You become real. You thought the silence would be peaceful, but it isn't, not yet. At first, it feels wrong, unnatural, like something's missing. You wake up and there's no noise, no emotional storms, no mental chaos begging for your attention. Just quiet. And that quiet feels heavy, like standing in a vast empty hall where your thoughts echo back at you. You should feel relieved after all. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To stop caring, to stop fighting. But freedom can feel strange when you've spent your whole life being chained to meaning. Your mind, desperate for a fight, starts whispering, something's wrong. You should be doing more. You should feel something. But you don't. You just exist. And for the first time, existing feels foreign. Here's what no one tells you about detachment. It's not a straight path to peace. It's a slow unraveling. Because when you stop caring, you strip away all the noise that used to distract you. And beneath that noise, you find yourself. Not the version you curated for the world. The one that smiled through exhaustion and pretended to have it all figured out. No. You find the version you abandoned long ago. the one that's been waiting quietly in the shadows, asking, "Are we safe to exist now?" You see, the silence after letting go isn't the end of the story. It's the confrontation that all the emotions you suppressed, the anger, the grief, the disappointment, they don't vanish. They rise one by one, patiently, like ghosts you thought you'd buried. You'll want to push them away, to fill the void again, to care about something just to feel alive. But don't, because this emptiness, this sacred silence, isn't a punishment. It's purification. There will be a night you won't know which one, when the silence feels unbearable. You'll lie awake and feel the weight of your thoughts pressing against the dark. And in that moment, you'll realize something profound. You didn't lose yourself when you stopped caring. You're meeting yourself for the very first time, without all the roles, without the expectations, without the noise of needing to be enough. You'll look around and notice how many of your choices were made from fear of being unloved, unnoticed, unworthy. And you'll see clearly now that caring wasn't the problem. It was why you cared. You cared because you thought love had to be earned, because peace had to be proven, because your existence had to mean something to someone else. But now, in the silence, you understand the truth. You were worthy long before anyone noticed you. And for the first time, you'll feel a peace that doesn't come from validation, but from presence. You'll begin to notice beauty again, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that hides in ordinary things. The way sunlight touches a wall, the sound of rain that no longer feels like sadness, the silence between heartbeats that feels almost divine. This is the reward of letting go, not power, not control, but clarity. You'll realize that the world didn't change, you did. The noise was never out there, it was always inside you. And now that it's gone, you can finally hear the truth beneath it all. That you were never meant to carry every burden, to fix every broken thing, to prove every ounce of your worth. You were only ever meant to be. But here's the paradox. When you finally stop caring and peace becomes your new normal, the world around you begins to shift. People sense it. They don't know why, but something about you feels different, untouchable, unbothered, whole. And some won't like it, because your silence will remind them of everything they're still running from. You'll see it in their eyes, confusion, discomfort, maybe even resentment. They'll say, "You've changed." And for the first time, you'll smile and agree, because you finally have. But here's the thing no one expects. After peace comes power, the kind that doesn't control, but simply is. And that's where the real transformation begins, when you no longer chase meaning, but become it. There comes a moment after the silence when you stop asking what's next. You just breathe. You just exist. No race to win. No image to uphold. Just the quiet pulse of being alive. And in that stillness, something changes, not outside you, but within. The same stillness that once felt empty now feels powerful. Not loud, not proud, just unshakably present. You realize peace was never the reward. Peace was the strength. When you begin to move again, the world looks different. Noise doesn't irritate you, it simply passes through you. People still talk, still rush, still chase, but you no longer need to keep up. You're not detached from life, you're anchored inside it. You start seeing patterns, how every conflict once fed your need to be seen. how every argument was an attempt to prove existence. Now you just watch, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand. Stillness lets you witness life instead of being consumed by it. That's the power no one notices. You stop reacting, and everything loses control over you. You begin to walk differently, slower, lighter, every step deliberate. You no longer chase answers, you invite them. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight. Because silence has taught you something speech never could, that most people listen to respond, not to understand. And in knowing this, you choose your moments carefully. You don't seek to be right anymore. You seek to be real. That's the quiet confidence of stillness. It doesn't shout. It doesn't convince. It simply is, and then something unexpected happens. Life begins to mirror your calm. Opportunities flow. People soften. Storms pass quicker. It's not magic. It's resonance. The world responds to the energy you bring. And stillness speaks louder than chaos ever could. You start to see why so many people fear peace, because peace forces you to face yourself. But you've already walked through that silence. You've already met your shadows. Now you stand as both the storm and the calm after it. This is what power feels like when it no longer needs to prove itself. One day someone will ask, "How did you become so calm?" And you'll smile, because you'll remember there was no secret, no technique, no miracle. You simply stopped fighting what was never yours to hold. You stopped caring about things that drained your soul and started listening to the quiet voice that waited underneath. That voice, the one you once ignored, is your truest self. It doesn't crave attention. It doesn't chase validation. It simply is. And when you finally live from that stillness, you realize something profound. You never needed to be understood. You only needed to understand yourself. This is the end of caring and the beginning of knowing. If this spoke to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe. Join a space where thought meets feeling and silence finally has a voice. Turn on the notifications, because the next piece isn't just a video, it's an awakening. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to the Neuro Ether.